Hello and a very warm welcome to our Conversations in Design session. I'm Claire Jansen, Managing Director of the Design Centre. In this virtual format, we're keeping our community engaged and inspired wherever they are. We're bringing together designers, industry insiders and media hosts for some great conversations online. By the power of technology, we're connecting with design talent from all around the world, and I'm delighted to introduce interior designer Tamzin Jansen, who's beaming in all the way from Sydney in Australia. We're in for a treat as Tamzin's projects have an effortless ease, balancing European heritage with a modern Australian coastal appeal. This really promises to be a very inspiring session, and who better to chair it than Sarah Spiteri, Editorial Director of Future Publishing. So without further ado, over to you, Sarah, and thank you all for tuning in. Thank you so much.
Hello to everyone watching, and thank you to Claire and of course the team at Design Centre Chelsea Harbour. I'm delighted once again to be kicking off Focus by talking to the incredible Australian interior designer Tamzin Jansen. It goes without saying really that creating individual spaces that reflect who we are has never been more important, and Tamzin does just that. Her interiors are distinctive and she works with unique furniture pieces to create rooms that are eclectic and refined. Her projects span residential, commercial and hospitality, and she works both in Australia and internationally. I love the way she combines pieces from different eras and origins. In her work, you can see this interplay between European heritage and Australian coastal elegance that I think is truly unique. And I like the way she combines high style with this eye for comfort. Now, Tamzin's first book, Tamzin Jansen, Space for Living, is just launching. It's a tome of inspiration. It walks through various of Tamzin's landmark projects, three of which we're going to talk about today. So Tamzin, hi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi.
Shall we start with the book? Can you tell us what motivated you to publish the book and a little bit about what you were hoping to achieve with it?
Yeah, of course. I think so as an avid collector of coffee table books, I always wanted to create my own, but you never know when that time will come. I wanted to create spaces for living, and I think I wanted to encapsulate both my commercial work and residential work because I approach both in the same realm. I want to create even commercial spaces that feel like you're welcomed into someone's home. So I love when you go through a coffee table book and you really feel like you've been welcomed into someone's life and you finish that last page and feel like you really know them. So I think I wanted to have a huge diversity. So there's a beach bungalow in Bondi Beach, there's a penthouse, there's a Parisian apartment in the Marais, there's a couple of my homes that I've shared with Patrick, my husband. And I think it's a really nice balance of the old and the new and dealing with different buildings. And yeah, creating that dialogue of just lived in beautiful spaces that are welcoming, not over-designed. And I think they range from grand family homes to, very cozy little ones. And I just want it to be spaces for living, but also spaces for sharing.
How would you define your style? Is that kind of balance how you would define, and it's a really difficult question, but if you were going to sum up your style, is that how you would define it?
I think so. I think my design ethos is when you walk into a space wanting that feeling that a space may have always been there. I strive to design spaces that look very comfortable and themselves. They look like they belong. They haven't been over-designed. They want to be natural, that complexity, and it needs to be layered. It needs to be natural. And that sense of material, it's a feeling, I think. And I think it's that balance of being layered but not too decorated. It's like removing those pieces you don't need and not feeling over-designed, not too cluttered, not too forced. I'm by no means a minimalist, but my instinct guides me in the process of removing the unnecessary to ensure a space just feels right and natural, a space that's always been there, and that feeling of just comfort, but really you've settled in your home.
Yeah, no, I think I absolutely get that from looking at your rooms. They are very edited in a beautiful way. It does feel that every single piece that you've included feels really considered. Can you sum up for us your design background, kind of your journey to today? I know that your parents worked in antiques, and yeah, tell us a little bit about your kind of journey to today.
Of course. Well, I literally grew up in an antique store. My parents were both antique dealers, art collectors. They took us on buying trips to France and all through Europe at the age of 4. And my sister and I were kind of reluctantly dragged along, and 5 a.m. starts in Avignon. And we're like, this is so boring. But I think, I think it kind of naturally just rubs off on you, and it's like an inherent thing. You kind of just soaking it all in without realizing. So we lived in Melbourne in Australia. The first home was just on High Street, which is basically, it's now like bridal boutiques and fashion boutiques and green juices. But back then it was about 40 to 50 antique stores in a row. So it was kind of a really beautiful upbringing. And they were amazing people. Dad's got a crazy wit. Mum's got an incredible work ethic. And I think that combined, they kind of blurred the line between work and life, and they took us on amazing adventures. They were constantly entertaining, whether it was clients popping in, friends, musicians, lawyers, businessmen, filmmakers. And my sister and I just were kind of learnt, they taught us from a very early age to just listen, keep your eyes open, talking to adults. Like, we'd have dinner parties and our German Shorthaired Pointer would be sitting at the table, and I'd be sitting next to a 60-year-old man and a 20-year-old, it was just a very kind of, I wouldn't say bohemian in some respects, but just, I don't know, it was just very comfortable, and they just wanted us to be observant and just soak it all in, really. And I don't know, it was just like, we kind of grew up from a very young age, but then on the weekends they'd throw us into the antique shop and say, here's $5 an hour, go and furniture. So my sister and I would sit in the gallery trying to pretend we knew what we were talking about.
And then you studied design in London, is that right?
I did. I studied fashion design actually first, and then I moved to London to work for Stella McCartney as an intern. And I met Mum and Dad after about 6 months, and I met them actually in Rome for a weekend. And I remember thinking, this pull from interior design was so deep, and I just had been contemplating it. And when you're out of home, you're far from your family home. I was away from my adopted home, and I got to Rome with them, and I said, I really want to study interior design. And they said, just do it. Just give it a go. You're young, 21, just do it. So I did, and I enrolled in Inchbold School of Design, which I loved. And I did a course, and while it didn't give me the skill set to start my own business, it taught me, firstly, that I'd made the right decision and definitely wanted to pursue the path of interior design. And the foundations were quite traditional, which was, I think, incredible for someone from Australia, because we're so far away from all of that, and we've got such a casual, relaxed approach to everything, that I think it was a really beautiful way to be thrown into it, like that traditional learning and symmetry.
So have you taken a lot of those things, those kind of essentially like rules, I suppose, that you learnt then? Do you, kind of, have you taken those and moved away from them, or have you kind of set your own ground rules now?
I think a bit of both, actually. I think they gave me those foundations to not be scared and trust your instinct. And I think that's the most important thing in interior design, is trust your instinct. And I don't know, it was the most precious resource that kind of shapes my design choices, I think, to trust your instinct. And I've continued to do so. And it's kind of, I don't know, it evolves your personal style. It's a slow process, but one you learn as you go. And I think once you finish one job, then you go to the next job and realize, okay, that really worked. They loved that. But this is a new client. They've got a completely different way of living. So we've got to adapt to this. So I think it definitely set my foundations. But I think I then worked for an amazing firm when I moved back to Australia, and I did lots of research and found a few cafes I liked the look of, some shops, and I realized they were all from the one designer. It was Bill Granger's restaurants, and then all the Zimmerman boutiques and a few of local Australian houses that I'd seen. I thought, that's who I need to work for. So I kind of tapped on their door.
Yeah, well, I was actually thinking to ask you, were there any designers or spaces that you think have shaped your style?
I think so, for sure. Like, I literally walked into this design studio and I said, you need to give me a job. And they said, okay, we've got 2 days for you. I was like, okay. So I remember writing a letter to the owner, like a handwritten letter. And I just said to him, I was like, I can't just do 2 days. You need to take me on full time. I'll work for free. I'll do anything. I need to just be there. And so they said yes, and they ended up paying me, thankfully. And I spent the next 5 years there, and the owner was a man called Don McWalter, and he really took me under his wing. He kind of, I don't know, he had an approach to design that I really respected, where no two designs were ever the same. Each project was approached with fresh eyes, and gave me that confidence to just keep pushing the boundaries and try something new every single time. So yeah. I think, I don't know if there's any advice to anyone starting out in this career, it would be just to find someone you love and their style, and then everything else will come easily, because you already, if you like their style, then you can trust your own style and trust your own instinct. So
yeah, that's really good advice. I want to talk about your approach to color and pattern and materials, but perhaps we'll do that as we start to look at some of your key projects, because I think that will come up, and I'm mindful of we haven't got all the time in the world. So perhaps we can first look at your home, which is an incredible coastal project in Sydney, I think.
Yes. So this was a home in Tamarama Beach, which is next to Bondi and in between from Bronte. It was a little beach bungalow, and this room you're looking at is hilarious because it was about 5 rooms. It had a little reading room, it had a laundry, a kitchen, and they were all enclosed. So there were 4 separate rooms and then a living room. And then there were 2 small windows that look over Tamarama Beach. So we completely gutted it, ripped out the ceiling, and then realized there was an amazing exposed pitch. So we clad that in beautiful timber lining boards, painted them a really high gloss so it reflected the room and bounced off the light, and then added some beautiful fresh timber floorboards, added a fireplace, and then slowly worked our way through finding a lot of art, which I think is one of those things that, I mean, I always say that to my clients, they're always quite in a rush to find everything to fill every room, but I think there's so much to be said about something unfinished, and sometimes it is about removing that last layer and adding to it as you go.
Yeah, so looking at this space, and actually if we look through any other images of your home, how would you talk about kind of color and pattern in your work? You know, do you have quite a restrained eye when it comes to color?
I don't know, I'm not a minimalist, but I try and practice restraint when approaching color and pattern. I think you don't want to go too far, and I think if you've picked one quite out there piece, then it needs to be kind of pulled back by something quite subtle. So I think, you know, if I'm working with a beautiful, crazy pattern or something, then I'll pull it back and complement it with a beautiful soft linen in a faded color that's been kind of sun-kissed. And the same as, you know, if you pick something quite textured, I'll bring it back to something quite refined and smooth. So it's about finding those kind of contrasts in textures, and the same as pattern. It's that, I don't know, that combining that like rugged and refined and that rough and the smooth, like if it's amazing honed marble, then maybe complement it with something like, I don't know, a bit tougher. So maybe like a chrome stainless or something, which we'll see in some of the future projects that are popping up. But I don't know, I think I like things that get better with age, faded with light, and marks of imperfection that maybe age with you. And I think it's about, you know, where does that light fall in the morning? Does it hit that floorboard in that beautiful way? So it's kind of finding different elements of the surroundings and letting them work out how to deal with what's inside.
And this kitchen, is that part of the open plan space that we just saw the other side of?
That was probably a laundry at one point, but that was the kitchen. So again, that's all open plan. So we created, it wasn't a huge footprint. So I wanted to actually just make one big living space. And I think it's, depending on the place, I quite like traditional layouts on floor plans of, you know, a kitchen and a living and dining room, but this was a house that needed to be opened up. So it needed to like let the light in. This was a kitchen. So with the beautiful Cadillac, like Venetian plaster, hand layered plaster work on the bench tops, the concrete splashback and concrete shroud around the range hood, little tiny Aga oven, which is so sweet, a teeny weeny one. And then, yeah, the beautiful high gloss ceiling, I think really reflects the whole space beautifully. And yeah, that was the kitchen.
Amazing. With colour and pattern, actually, obviously, because, you know, a house by the water in Sydney compared to, say, the flat you did in the Murray, which we're actually not walking through today, but do you find your context really influences the way you bring in colours and patterns?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also about the client and the way they live. So I think the first part about, you know, approaching any project is working out how that client lives. What do they want out of the space? Will they use every corner of that room? If they don't, then we've got to work out a way of how they will. So I think it's about the light and the surroundings for sure. There's our old dog Hector. But yeah, I think it's just about bringing the natural surroundings in. And this one was very much so about the view. And it was about looking at the ocean and looking at the waves and that, you know, the sunset. And so I didn't want to, that's why the palette's quite monochromatic and quite subdued and pared back. I just wanted it quite natural. So then the outdoor could kind of sing. Whereas other projects, if you're working with, you know, leafy outlooks or inner cityscapes, so out there, that's that's all Tamarama Beach. So it's it's a very misty day, but down below there's just ocean. So I wanted that to be kind of the focus of the whole living space.
Almost as an extra piece of art. You know, your art is amazing, and you can really, it does feel that collected eye. I suppose I can see why with clients wanting to get everything all at once, that is more of a struggle.
Oh, definitely. I'm like, just wait, there's no rush.
And with the textures that you've brought in here, I know we've talked a little bit about concrete and tadlact, and I think in your bathrooms as well, you've beautifully brought in kind of natural colors with texture. How do you come up with a texture palette?
No, I always start with a floor plan, and then the second step is always finishes for me. So I'll start laying them all out. And I think if I go something a bit, glamorous or shiny, then I'll think, okay, I need to go the complete extreme. So then I'll soften it with a beautiful jute carpet. And then if I pick a whitewashed floorboard, then I think, okay, we need a bit of something strength. So it might be like an ebonized, timber feature. So both of the bar stools and the dining chairs are that beautiful hand ebonized blackened finish. So I think it's all about that contrast for me as I design. So I think once I pick one thing, it might be a beautiful glamorous velvet, and then I think, okay, we need to chill it back a bit. So let's throw in some rattan. Yeah. So I think it's about finding that balance that's going to create a really calming space, something very natural, and that just feels like someone doesn't want to leave, really.
Yeah, I think they definitely get that. And I think the pieces that you choose also always look very comfortable, which I think with contemporary design isn't always that easy to achieve.
Yeah, I know.
The next project we're going to look at is called Treehouse in your book. That's just one of your beautiful bathrooms as well. Gosh, there's so much more we could say about this, but we might move on to the next project, which it's called Treehouse in your book. And the reason I wanted us to talk about that one is because obviously Tamarama project has that incredible view and it has a sense of scale. But I think what this next one we're going to look at does is shows that actually it's a penthouse in a smaller space. You can still use the same tools to kind of really create life enhancing rooms. So it'd be great if you could talk us through this Melbourne project next.
I'd love to. So this is quite a funny one. I went down to the client, and she's a very busy young professional, and she got called into a meeting. So I literally walked in, and it was not a nice looking place by any means at the time. And she had a note under the door. It just said, "Please make my home amazing. I'll trust you to do whatever you want." And I'd never met her. I actually then hadn't met her for a few months. Like, we basically were bumping in because she was so busy. And she just had that, I think when someone just instills that amazing trust in you, you just want to put your best foot forward and make it absolutely incredible. So I kind of just thought, okay, what would you want to do if you live looking over the botanical gardens in this little flat? And I just wanted to open it up, let the light in, create an amazing, comfortable space. She entertains a lot. So this was her spot. There's a little TV popped in behind those the cabinetry on the left, but we didn't want to make it's too small a space to want to make that the footprint of the room. So big, beautiful, comfortable living divani sofa, the Bombolei chair, and a bit of a nod to the mid-century. We had some beautiful Murano fittings. And yeah, so this is a living space, and then I did a beautiful photo wall, and then to the left that looks over the whole entire Melbourne Botanical Garden. So it's a really special home, this one.
And those architectural details, what I'm calling them architectural details, things like the arches, did you introduce them to kind of add interest to quite a boxy room?
For sure, and just soften it and make it feel like it's not just a square. It's about, creating a living room and a dining room and a kitchen all in one together. And I don't think it's about scale in any job. Some of my jobs are, vast, and some are tiny. So I think it's more about, I connect with the client and want to give them, the best possible version of what their home can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us about this side of the room. Is this the same space?
It's the same room looking the other way. So the back of the sofa, then it's onto the Charles Rennie Macintosh, I think it's 1970s dining setting, which I bought in the south of France. And then a custom terracotta kind of that Corbusier red wall light. I just wanted to have a few little handmade elements within a room that's quite strict. And then she loves entertaining, but she's not a huge cook. So she wanted just, it's, like a beautiful kitchen that you kind of sit around and immerse yourself in. So I've combined the Calcutta Viola marble with that beautiful brushed stainless steel beautiful fittings, and then all on the left side is hidden fridges, hidden pantries. I just didn't want to have any handles. I wanted it all really streamlined. Just because it is a smaller space, I didn't want to overcook it. So I
Would
wanted
you
to keep
say that would be your advice to people approaching kind of smaller spaces, that, you know, where possible, it is quite good to keep lines quite simple?
Yeah, I think so. I think it certainly depends on the space, and also the outlook. So again, we're dealing, it's not Tamarama, you're not looking over the beach, but it is just, it's a tree-lined street, and beyond that's the beautiful, the botanical garden. So I think I just wanted to focus on the outside coming in, and there's so much greenery out there, so I didn't mind keeping it quite strict inside. Like, this is quite a strict kitchen, as is the bathroom. It's that beautiful, again, that Venetian plaster finish and the concrete, then a bit of the Murano sconce, which softens it and adds that point of difference, I think, and kind of a little bit more feminine touch on quite a masculine finish of the kitchen. I'm sorry, of the bathroom.
No, and I think that's, you know, your eye really does combine quite kind of, as you say, tough materials sometimes, or with those pretty touches. I think it's, you know, that kind of interplay is really effortless with you and very admirable. You mentioned when we were chatting at the beginning how you wanted with the book to mix hospitality and commercial projects amongst residential, because that, you know, when you are approaching a contract project, you want to bring that same comfort and, you know, social atmosphere. So talk us a little bit about your portfolio in terms of what kind of contract. Do you do all kinds of commercial work?
Yeah, I do it all, actually. I probably have 80% is residential at most times, and then I take on a couple of commercial jobs a year. So I'm currently working on a couple of retail boutiques, a hotel, and a restaurant, and then the rest are residential. So it's kind of, I like to have a couple. It's nice because the pace is different. You're dealing with a business rather than a person, but I think I still approach both of them the same way. And I want that, even if you're working on a hotel, I want it to feel like, you know, it's like when we'll get to the Rays Hotel, which we're about to talk about, but that feeling where you walk in and you're kind of home. It doesn't feel like you're walking into a hotel where you're just another, you know, person coming in and then you leave and you've gone. I want it to feel like you have your own personal experiences. You've been treated like, you know, you've been welcomed into someone's family. So
yeah, so let's look at Rays in Byron Bay, because I think you absolutely have managed to combine those two things. You know, it feels obviously incredibly smart and special the way that, but equally it does feel like you're at home. It's a wonderful combination. I mean, you know, I know that lots of us know about Byron, but tell us a bit about the context. And
so there's Byron Bay, and then there's Watergoes, which is a little pocket to the south, and it's the most magical place. It's one of those places you arrive and you're just instantly relaxed. Like, you leave all your problems behind and you just settle in. And there's only 7 rooms, and there's one of them has 2 bedrooms. So it's a pretty small boutique hotel, but I think it was built in 1974 as a kiosk, and then they've slowly built up rooms and then developed into a restaurant. And then the owners took it over about 10 years ago when I started working on it, maybe 8 years ago. And we just completely gutted it and changed it. But at the same time, I wanted to work with the amazing elements that were there. So the architecturally from that last image, it's so beautiful. And so we just wanted to, even all the architecture I wanted to bring into the rooms, because at the time the rooms were they were decorated in quite a Balinese style and quite dark, and dark velvets and dark timbers. And I just wanted to lighten the whole space up, freshen it up, and actually feel like the feeling when you arrive at Watergoes. And that is just that sense of just that, you know, eternal summer, and just that beautiful feeling of, you know, relaxation and leaving everything behind, and you're on pure holidays. And so we kind of, I freshened it all up with, you know, custom furniture, some antiques, lots of beautiful custom upholstery, a bit of auto Monet, lots of rattan, lots of greenery to bring it all in and out, and some Moroccan tiles, because it's got that quite Moroccan aesthetic as it is from the facade. So I wanted that to kind of sing in every room.
absolutely, it does. I mean, what I find just so amazing is how varied the sources you obviously pull together from so many different suppliers, essentially. And actually, we've only got about 5 minutes left, and I really wanted to have a chance to chat with you about your kind of little black book, for want of a better word, because I feel there are obviously so many, I mean, it's just, you know, you kind of it feels like you choose, very carefully choose such amazing select pieces. And it's, as I said, very well edited. So, would you be happy to kind of chat through any brands that you love or any sort of go-to stockists? Just because I think,
we focus on London then? It might be easier. I mean, I think generally for most of my projects, I approach them with a bit of a balance between custom pieces, antiques and vintage pieces, mid-century, and then some contemporary. So it's kind of finding that balance for me. And it's about, I think I love when you walk into a room and you might not necessarily know where something was from, but then, combining that with amazing custom items, and then combining that with beautiful upholstery and amazing fabrics and textures. And then, that one-off piece that just like blows your mind and you just leaves you thinking about it. But I think in terms of London, in my little black book, fabric-wise, I tend to go to C&C Milano and Dominic Kiefer for a lot of their beautiful, their kind of sun-kissed linens and cottons. Dada for a bit more glamorous silks and moires and their beautiful silk stripes. Stark Carpet I go to a lot, Pierre Frey for their prints, Cole & Son for their wallpapers. Then down on Pimlico Road, I go to Rosie Uniacke and Gallery 25 a lot, which I love. She's got an amazing eye. And then a lot of amazing bookshops. Like I love Idea Books in Soho. I love going through all the galleries, the British Museum to look at the antiquities. I mean, it's just really making me want to get to London, this conversation.
When you look for inspiration, is that one of the ways you find inspiration, or are you looking in galleries, or, where would you say your kind of sources for inspiration are?
I think everywhere. I mean, at the moment we're in complete lockdown. So my husband and I are just reading books every night. So my current obsession is this new book I just got, which is called Decoration by Maison Jansen. And I think it was first published in 1970, and it spans their history of the start of their furniture house from, I think it's 1880. So just every room so different. It's so layered. It's very hard to get your hands on a copy. So I'm just treasuring it and slowly working my way through it. But I'm thinking typical times, I mean, everywhere, travel for sure. Like I'll sometimes I went to the Agnes Martin exhibition at the Guggenheim about 7 years ago. And then I started like looking at that and did a few rugs that were kind of similar in reference. I don't know. I mean, I think inspiration can be found absolutely everywhere, and you've just got to keep your eyes open, observe, and take it all in it,
And what are you working on next? What's, obviously the book must have been a bit of an endeavor, and I don't know whether in lockdown it's been easy to kind of continue working. Obviously in Sydney, you've had a slight mix of no lockdown when we were all locked down, and now I think.
I know, we're just a bit behind. We're coming out of it soon, I think. But so hopefully I'll be over your way soon. But yeah, I mean, a bit of everything. I'm doing a rooftop bar at the moment, lots of residential projects, kicking off work again overseas. So I've got a job in New York that I'm about to start on. I'm doing my husband's showroom in New York at the moment in Soho because we've just moved. The hotel in Dubai is kicking off. So it's just a big mix. But again, it's always balanced between a bit of residential and then a couple of commercial jobs, which I love as well. So it's kind of that balance. But yeah, it's been busy, so I can't complain at the moment.
To push the kind of Tamzin Jansen look in a different direction. Obviously, it's hard for me to sort of picture Dubai, lots of what you think about Dubai, and obviously what you do is so kind of pared back and refined. Are there any that are kind of pushing your studio in a slightly different direction, or are you able to kind of remain true to your kind of core values, all of that wide breadth of project?
I don't know. I feel like I approach every single job with fresh eyes. So I think there's no two jobs that are the same, but you kind of welcome them all the same way, and, focus on their purpose, focus on what they want out of it, keeping it quite, us, but also appropriate for the client and their settings. So I think it's about just finding that balance between all of those things and making them work and making them come alive, I guess.
And as I think, thinking back to your book, Spaces for Living, I think that's almost is what really kind of it brings that cohesion to all the projects that you do. Thank you so much, Tamzin. Just to let everybody know, Tamzin's book is available. It's published by Rizzoli. It's available to purchase now from Protestant Books at the Harbour and elsewhere from the beginning of October. Thank you for joining us. And there's so much going on in real life. It's great that we've been able to use Zoom to kind of have this global conversation, but of course there's so much going on in real life at the harbour this week. There's physical events from workshops, talks, obviously all the amazing new collections from the great brands that Tamzin mentioned. So yeah, please make sure everybody watching heads to Focus. And yeah, thanks again, Tamzin. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Bye.